Welcome to Read This Author's Corner. I am your host, Alice James, and on this episode, we will be talking to Ms. Sandra Parham, who is the Library Executive Director for the Meharry Medical College. Welcome, Ms. Parham.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Happy to have you. I have so much respect for the work you're doing. You're doing what I call a lot of legacy work, and that to me is so needed, so needed for our community. But before we jump into that, in our first discussion, you had told me about your interesting path to Meharry. So just tell me a little bit about your path to Meharry.
Truly, it came full circle. I'm a native Nashvilleian, graduated from Fisk, and left Fisk to go to the University of Michigan to specialize in medical librarianship. Finished the degree, came home, walked in the door of Meharry, and said, "I'm here. Do we have any job opening for a medical librarian?" They're like, "No, no, baby, we really don't." I'm like, "Oh my goodness." My career was based on coming back to Meharry. So long story short, University of Michigan has a policy of if you graduate, we will find you a job. They did. As a children's librarian in Detroit, Michigan, the farthest from my goals of anything I could have thought I wanted to do. So as it would be, left Detroit, ended up in Houston, Texas, and actually worked in the science and technology area of Houston Public Library, was getting close to the medical piece. But then took a direction toward academic libraries and went to work at one of the HBCUs, Texas Southern University.
Mm,
At Texas Southern University, as with most of our HBCUs, you do not wear one hat. So not only was I over special collections, I was the archivist for Barbara Jordan, who at that time was still living. I was the curator of an African art gallery and the librarian for special collections and the university archives, probably about 4 or 5 hats. And did I mention records manager? Records manager for the university. So jumped into it, but it was probably one of the most intriguing and I'll say jobs that led to a career path that I could not have imagined. Working with Barbara Jordan, who at that time again was retired from Congress, but had left her papers to Texas Southern where she was a graduate.
oh,
I thought it was just going to be her congressional papers. Oh no, it was her life papers. So we went from birth to Barbara Jordan's, of course, her end of life time period. After 20 years with Texas Southern, I moved to California, Los Angeles, a small community, Carson, California, got past the WASP issues, accrediting body for that area, and then had the opportunity to build, it's still a dream to me, a $50 million library.
wow.
And I was there about 15 years. I spent the last 5 years of enjoying the library and decided to retire, go back home to Nashville. My mother was approaching 99. I
Mhm.
said, I need to get home to my family. Moved everyone, my children, my grandkids to Nashville, Tennessee, back home
Okay.
and retired. And it took me probably 1 month of retirement to say, I don't want to retire and take grandchildren to school every day. So I took a job at Lipscomb University, which is a Church of Christ school, uh, a predominantly white Church of Christ school.
Mhm.
When I got there, I said, we're going to partner with some HBCUs. So I got a grant to work with the archives of Fisk and Meharry. Fisk and Meharry are literally right across the street from each other, right?
Oh, wow.
So I know Fisk had it covered. I walk in Meharry stores after not being here for uh, probably 50 years, ever coming back
Right.
to Meharry. Walked in the door. As it happened, they did not have a library director. I was like, oh my goodness. I'm in there working with the archives and in the area of the art. Meharry probably has the most extensive archives of any library I've ever seen within the HBCU system. From
Wow.
1876, we had papers, we have diplomas, we have the bricks, we had it
Wow.
in this archive. So I talked to the president, President Hildreth, and said, I want this job. I want to come home. I want to be back with my people. That's the answer. He said, of course, come home.
Oh, come on,
Uh,
that's
when
beautiful.
I hit the door running. It was like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. We need a current history of Meharry. Probably had about four, but we
Mhm.
didn't have one that was a pictorial. The book
Okay.
I did is largely a pictorial with Arcadia Press, which you'll see they have these books for almost at least the majority of the HBCUs. They have
Mhm.
one for Fisk, they have one for Howard, different places where they've done little histories with
Mhm.
more pictures than narratives. So
Right.
that's how I came to do the book, The History of Meharry. In the meantime, we've done I'll say a movie, a short documentary, a video, which
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen the series. So everyone has seen the Ken Burns series of the Civil War.
Mhm.
If I remember anything, I remember the music. And I loved that timeless music that was kind of, it just brought you back to the time period of the
Right.
1800s.
Mhm.
So I said, we're going to do a movie and we're going to use the music. They're like, no, you have to get permission. It's been copyrighted. You cannot go and use the music. So who do I have to ask? Ken Burns. They,
Mm.
yeah, good chance you're getting Ken Burns. I emailed Ken Burns. You have to get the music. You have to be able to get it from the author, the writer
Mhm.
of the music, which was Jay
Mhm.
Unger. What's his email? They're like, you're never going to get him to release this soundtrack from that documentary to Meharry. Email. He said, sure. Love the idea. He said, tell me what you want to do. I said, I'm doing this to as a backdrop for the history of one of the first HBCUs, 1876, first medical schools. And he said, yes, just send me the release before you put it out. So we have a beautiful documentary with the music from Ken Burns, the Civil War. It's called Ashokan's Farewell. Uh, and so we created a movie to go along with the videos and the timeline. We're also doing a timeline of a school out in our foyer. It's not just a small timeline. It is a 12 feet by 48 square dimension
Wow.
timeline going around the circle of the lobby. We don't do anything small when we do it.
I see. I love your spirit. I love consider you a woman of faith
I
because
am. Thank you. I am.
usually people put themselves in these boxes of what they can see. But I love the fact that you dream bigger than you even know how you're going to get there. You just believe you're going to get there.
I pray big. I pray big.
I love that. I'm going to use that one. In doing my research to talk with you, I saw the wagon story, the wagon story, but the fact that there was in that story, there are people that weren't mentioned because there was no documentation.
Right.
What you're doing is making sure that there is documentation. You're making sure everyone is recognized, and I have to take my hat off to you. But I would love for you to share the wagon story and the
You know, and we don't know. Sometimes we say the legend of and
Mhm.
such, but the challenging part about it, you're right, is going back to document. And it's amazing how much of the history we were able to put together. But the story really starts in 1826 with a young man, Samuel Meharry, was driving a salt wagon and it was stuck in the mud somewhere, we think, in the area of Ohio, Kentucky. And he had to rely on a Black family, a Black man, free Black man came out and assisted him. They couldn't get the wagon out of the mud. So the Black family said, come on in for the night and we'll get it out in the morning, which they did. Now, the amazing part about it is we don't know the name of the Black man, the Black family, but the more amazing part, 1826, he could have not, he didn't know who was at the door. It could
Right,
have been someone to take away his freedom, to
right,
say, you're captured again. But this Black man took a chance and went out and helped Samuel Meharry.
right.
Samuel Meharry said, I don't have any money now, but someday I'm going to do something to help your people. Help your people. Fast forward 1875, he meets up with a man, a minister, Tom Braden, who had
Mhm.
started a school called Central Tennessee College. And it was exactly that. It was one of those Freedmen's Bureau schools
Right.
that was created to help slaves transition into freedom. Samuel Meharry said, my chance. Can you imagine all these
Yeah.
years later? And he said, my chance to now help. What he said, I'll do something for your people. He gave at the time uh, $30,000. His
Yeah.
family. He went to his whole family and said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to give this money to this fledgling school, and thus started Meharry Medical College.
Wow. That.
We give kudos, of course, to Samuel Meharry, and the story of the hospital after that, of course, was Hubbard Hospital.
Mhm.
George Hubbard was hired to start with Sneed, and that's another story because Sneed was a Confederate Army surgeon. George Hubbard was on the Union side. These two men got together and decided they were going to assist what was then Meharry Medical College. So George Hubbard became the first president of the school. And again, can you imagine? It's like the Republicans and the Democrats getting together and saying,
Yes,
we
right,
can do this
right.
for the good of the people, of a people. Okay. So there we have the first two. Again, we have the story of a president, and again, his first assistant, a faculty member, actually starting their role of, for one, just getting more faculty to come to the school. They had to actually start teaching these young, and I say young, I mean, these young men were fresh out of slavery, and women. Um, and if you can imagine, from 1865 to say we just got out of slavery to the next, not even the next generation, that same group to say we
Right.
can go on to become doctors, it was
Yes.
amazing. And to see the first pictures of, first you start out with 5 graduates, 20 graduates. Next thing you know, they're across the board hundreds of African American students, females, nurse technicians,
Right.
pharmacists. It was amazing. Meharry has an amazing story.
What was the catalyst for deciding to create a book?
Funding,
Okay.
funding. There's never enough money
Mhm.
in the larger scale of libraries to also fund the archives. The budget for a medical library, the materials is huge. We know the science materials, medical materials, resources cost more, databases,
Mhm.
technology costs more than you can imagine, millions of dollars. So if I wanted to promote the archives, I had to find a way to fund the initiatives. So I said, okay, let's write a book. Write a recent book again. Meharry had about 4 good historical narratives. One was actually done during the time period when Meharry first was created by Dr. Roman. But we didn't have, it was narrative, it was stories, it was facts and such. But I always say a picture's worth 1,000 words. If you could
Yeah.
see what the school looked like, if you could see the faces of these young men. And when I get a magnifying glass, and I do, and I look at their faces, it makes you laugh and cry at the same time. You see the staunch faces of, I've got this. You see the fear of, I don't know where I am and what I'm doing. You see the
Mhm.
women who say, you're not going to lock me out. Uh,
Right.
I love looking at the faces of these young men and women. And we call it the spirit of this place called Meharry. The reason why you're here, there's the reason why our ancestors created the school, and you've got to know it. So I decided to take the students on a Meharry tour this last year, an
Okay.
inaugural tour. So I put them on a Gray Line bus,
Mhm.
and we went to places where their former faculty and such lived and practiced medicine, which was right in the area of the school still. But the
Mhm.
first campus was actually in South Nashville, another part of Nashville. As it would happen, the original Hubbard house, the house where Dr. Hubbard lived, is still standing. So
Okay.
I'm on the board for the renovation of this house. So I said, we're gonna go see this house. I want you to see where your ancestors walked. When you walk up on that porch and know that this was a time period when Hubbard was alive, those that we read about were still alive. And then we're going to go to the cemetery of where they're buried. Now
Mhm.
was interesting. I don't think the students anticipated that we're going to be trasping through a cemetery on a 100-degree day, but we did. We visited the graves of Dr. Hubbard, his wife, Josie Wells, some of the doctors that you read about. They're buried at historic Greenwood Cemetery. So we did that,
Mhm.
came back to the school, had a discussion about it. And now it's not just the inaugural tour. We're going to do this every year for the first year medical
Wow.
students.
Again, this is all very much a part of what I call legacy work, and I can so truly respect and relate to that. Years ago, I had started a girls mentoring program at the church that I attended. And we always did a lot of different things with the young ladies. And one year we took a group of them down to South Jersey, because it was in New Jersey, to a Quaker home that was
Mm,
a part of the Underground Railroad.
mm, mm.
And they got to go inside and they got to see the teeny tiny places that slaves were hid. It didn't even look like a baby could fit in there, less than a full grown human being. And I remember how absolutely touched it just a change, just a shift that I saw in these young ladies, that when you hear, you read, you see it on TV, but when you physically are in the environment and you physically know that this really did happen, it takes on a totally different life. So
It does.
I I applaud you for having the foresight and the insight to actually make that a part of the journey. What is something that you can tell me from the history book that probably surprised you or blew you away? Is there anything that like sticks out in your mind that you you wish you were a part of, or you feel that everybody should know this?
The role of females in the history of Meharry Medical College. Josie Wells was a graduate of Meharry's. I want to get her class right. She died in 1921. So 1904, she was born, and she came to Meharry as a single mother. She was married, her husband had passed, and she came to go to medical school. Well, she actually came in as a nurse in a nursing program with a child.
Mhm.
This woman went from nursing to, I want to be a doctor. She graduated, and it's to me, the pictures tell 1,000 words. When you graduate, you take a picture of your class.
Mhm.
Okay. So then she immediately after graduating became a member of the faculty of Meharry. So a lone female, the picture of, they always take a picture of the faculty. She's down in the corner at the bottom. The president is in the center. By the time I didn't even give it 5 years, this lady's picture was right next to the president. She had become the hospital administrator, the major fundraiser for Hubbard Hospital, the administrator of the nurses, and it's like, oh my goodness. So even the historian who wrote about her back then, you could tell the biasness toward her as a female. But it was
Mhm.
amazing,
Right.
amazing. There were only two people in her graduating class, two females. And this
Mhm.
one goes on that she not only is just on the faculty, she's Dr. Hubbard's right hand. Not
Right.
right hand. She raises the money to build the hospital, major fundraiser for her. That is, to me, she's my shero. So we did a historical marker for Josie Wells last year,
Mhm.
beautiful marker of the National Historic Foundation. Her her children, her great 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 grandchildren came back to as we unveiled the marker. We did a video of her story. And again, that was one that had to go back and say, Meharry was one of the first of all the medical schools in the United States who had a entree for females. It's enough to be a minority, but to be a minority female,
We're double
double
minorities.
minority, and to make it to the top, and then do the fundraising for the hospital, she was
Yes.
bad.
Yes. Yes,
That was
she was.
that was one story that amazed me, and the fact that Meharry was just not medicine, had a pharmacy school, it had a dental school still in existence. We now have
Mhm.
a master's program, and now we have a computer technology program.
Oh,
So we've
wow.
gone from medical college, and again, dental is still standing strong. Meharry Dental School has graduated more dentists in the United States than any other school. Breadth of the medical college went from pharmacy to dental to nurses to dental hygienists. It was amazing. And again, this is a private school,
Right.
no state dollars,
Mhm.
no state dollars. We had to depend on the Freedmen's Bureau, then the philanthropists of the Rockefellers and such, who are giving heavily to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is the other medical college, of course, in Nashville, Tennessee,
Mhm.
founded before Meharry, but not a lot of years beforehand.
Mhm.
But were given mammoth amounts of money for research and for care. Meharry was given money only to help the community. There was no research dollars. That not only did we do that, we were able to do research, research on diseases that were affecting those people too. The leading
Exactly.
researcher on pellagra, which they thought was a disease that affected, well, they know it affected everyone, but they thought it was created in the Black community. It wasn't. But the
Mhm.
fact that we got in there and still used dollars that weren't there, found money to not only be a research institution,
Mhm.
but also to be a community outreach for our people.
Thank you for watching Read This. And on this episode, I think we have to take into consideration the old adage, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and thank Miss Parham for the wonderful collection of artifacts and art that she has put together in the book. For watching, and ensure to pick up a copy of the Meharry Medical School's history.